Hi, sweeties. How are you doing? Welcome to Naya Sim, and thank you all so much for all the love and support. Hope you all are doing great. Today, we'll be talking something very important, and it's about this video that I came across about Charlie Kirk all over again. Really, I don't know where to start from because it looks like some people also want to defend Charlie Kirk for his racist behavior and rants that he started going on about black people. The last time I checked, it was him saying that if it were black people, I mean, if he sees a black pilot, he is going to ask, are they really qualified to be the pilot, right? And now, this young man called black women moronic. Why? Just for no reason. And the fact that they wake up every day to gaslight themselves, not even black women. And if you look around, it is amazing how the person that is calling out black women out forgot that black women are the most educated all over. Check it out. And the person calling black women moronic does not have a degree. If that is not white privilege, tell me what that is. I mean, somebody is calling out somebody with a great job or someone that went to school and all that, got her degree, got his degree, master's, PhD, and the rest of it, you know? If this is not white privilege, I don't know what you all call white privilege. Let's get into this video.
Just customer service. At times, you can't, here's what's upsetting to me, Heather, is if I'm dealing with somebody in customer service who's a moronic black woman, I wonder, is she there because of her excellence, or is she there because of affirmative action? It almost creates thought patterns that are not necessarily wholesome. It creates resentment, doesn't it, Heather? This is not a way to design society.
Does anybody else find it so rich with Charlie Kirk here, sitting here talking about a black woman benefiting from affirmative action? Is a thought running through his mind when he's on customer service, sitting next to a white woman? Does anybody find that rich except me? Why can't these bigots just come out and say they're racist? Because obviously intelligence is not their strong suit. You're literally sitting there talking to a white woman about black women benefiting most from affirmative action, when it is white women literally who benefit the most from affirmative action. This is not even an extensive Google search to find out that although people associate affirmative action with the efforts to end discrimination for people of color, scholars say the greatest beneficiaries of affirmative action policies are white women, from college campuses to the American workplace. White women today are more educated and make up a larger slice of the workforce as a result of decades of affirmative action policies, scholars say. White women have also made inroads into corporate leadership that people of color and women of color have not. And allow me to say this going forward, because I'm always asking you all to pick a struggle. The issue is you all cannot pick a struggle. From now on, when you introduce yourselves, I want you to say, I'm a racist, and because of my inbred genetic makeup, I am also incapable of research. Therefore, I am intentionally stupid.
At times, you can't, here's what's upsetting to me, Heather, is if I'm dealing with somebody in customer service who's a moronic black woman, I wonder, is she there because of her excellence, or is she there because of affirmative action? It almost creates thought patterns that are not necessarily wholesome. It creates resentment, doesn't it, Heather?
Okay, so to the black conservatives who've been in my DMs and making videos about me because you feel the need to convince me that Charlie Kirk isn't a racist, you're defending this, right? This is what you're defending. The guy isn't even trying to hide his racism. Every time he uses someone as an example to prove his disdain for DEI or affirmative action, he always uses a black person. This time it's a black pilot or a moronic black woman. Soon it'll be his idiotic, moronic, dumbass black conservative friend. Yeah, you. And again, DEI does not mean less qualified. You could damn sure believe that if a black person is holding down one of these jobs you guys love to bring up, they're probably more qualified and working harder than anyone there because they always have to prove that they're worthy of that job. You guys will sell out for a freaking penny, but the rest of us, we're not falling for this bullshit. Period.
Don't want no enemies or ops. Envy in they heart, I tell them stop. Vacation on the yacht.
How white women have benefited the most from affirmative action is pretty easy to look up, and since this question is coming from a nameless, faceless profile, I'm not sure that it's being asked in good faith. If it's being asked in good faith, I'm about to give the answer. If it's being asked in bad faith, maybe in the future ask yourself whether I'm really the person that you want answering this kind of question. So affirmative action was originally meant to address racial disparities only. It did not include gender. But in the late 1960s, the government correctly recognized that women had faced a great deal of disparity and obstacles and should be included in affirmative action. So keeping in mind that the only demographic that was not previously included in affirmative action that became included with that change is white women. And affirmative action was so effective for white women that by 1980, white women were no longer underrepresented in higher education. And by 1995, there were 6 million women, the vast majority of whom were white, who held jobs that they would not have held were it not for affirmative action. And this is all great. These are wonderful outcomes, and it shows how affirmative action should work for its intended beneficiaries. However, black students are still underrepresented in higher education, and black men and women are still underrepresented in the workforce. And although there is still a gender pay gap, white women's average weekly earnings is more than that of black men or black women. And white men continue to benefit from affirmative action, particularly in the federal job sector. However, despite the fact that white women have been the greatest beneficiaries of affirmative action, 70% of them oppose affirmative action. So there also goes the idea that white women do not vote against their interests.
Yes, this is true. The biggest group who's benefited from affirmative action is white women. Given the choice between hiring people of color of any gender versus still hiring someone who's white but a woman, they went with white women. That being said, the problem of racism has been built over centuries and centuries and centuries, and so we cannot expect that our solutions will be silver bullets that just are perfect right out the gate. So yes, affirmative action does have its flaws, and we need to come up with better ways to be more inclusive and, equitable. However, what racists are trying to do is say any effort to get racial equity is racist, and that's what I'm pointing.
I'm sure by now we've all heard that the U.S. Supreme Court struck down affirmative action. There have been many people talking about this and what's going to come of it and how things are going to change and so on and so forth, and I'm also interested in that. But something that many people have spoken about on TikTok and on Twitter is that the biggest beneficiaries of affirmative action are not people of color, they're actually white women. And I wanted to go into a little bit why this is the case for those of us that aren't as familiar with affirmative action. So the point of affirmative action legally was to increase representation for historically underrepresented groups in academia. So this was people of color, this was international students, this was women, this is queer people, although less so queer people at the time. But these are all people who have been historically underrepresented in the academy. Most universities, as a result of this, were like, what is a group that is historically underrepresented but will help me not include black and brown people? White women. So many universities, by increasing the number of white women that they admitted into their university, were satisfying the requirements of affirmative action without actually having to increase the number of people of color that attend their university. Today's decision was about striking down race-based affirmative action. But a quick aside, race-based affirmative action was actually deemed unconstitutional in 1978 and again in 2003 with 2 different Supreme Court cases, but I'll make a different video talking about both of those cases. But regardless of those two Supreme Court cases, today's decision was about striking down race-based affirmative action, which functionally, because in the United States many people believe that affirmative action is just about race, ends affirmative action. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens as the repercussions of this decision start to leak down and we start to see that it's actually not people of color who are being affected the most by this, it's white people. But if that's not America, honey, I don't know what is.
Is affirmative action really racist, AF?
Well, it puts certain people at advantages or disadvantages based solely on their race, and it also says that African Americans cannot succeed in a merit-based system. So, yeah, it is racist.
What if I told you it benefited white women more than anyone else? Would it still be racist AF?
Yeah, it actually would be. But it's not true, so it doesn't really matter. And if you genuinely believed it was true, then you would be opposing affirmative action, not defending it. The Times article she cites here says, according to one study in 1995, 6 million women, the majority of whom are white, had jobs that they otherwise would not have had but for affirmative action. So let's go here. One study. This brings us to a blog by Tim Wise. Tim Wise is the author of Between Barack and a Hard Place. He says basically the same thing the Times article says, and then he gives a citation. His citation is this book. The book quotes the study. It again is not the study itself. Estimated 6 million women wouldn't have the jobs they have today if it not were for the inroads made by affirmative action. The author then asserts that white women have been the primary beneficiaries of affirmative action. But if we look at the actual original source, it says 6 million women have moved into executive, managerial, professional, and sales jobs since 1972. But it does not mention the racial makeup of these 6 million women. But it also says that 5.5 million of minority employees are in higher level jobs because of this as well. So nothing here indicates that white women disproportionately benefited. That information is just insufficient. So we have to look at other studies that actually look at this specific issue. So here we can see the breakdown of white male, white female, black female. And of course we have the different years and the different jobs. The main jobs mentioned prior were managerial positions and sales, so let's look at those ones. You can see the share of black women doubled in managerial positions from 1966 to 1980. The share of white women increased, but it did not double. The share of black men more than doubled. The share of black women increased in sales. The share of white women decreased in sales. So it's not looking good for the claims made in that Times article. Here is another study. This is a more recent study. It looks at many of the same things, just over a longer period. I want to focus on this quote right here. Affirmative action increased the employment of black and Native American women and men at the expense of white women. So the data shows the exact opposite of the claim made in the Times article. But again, even if it was the case that white women were disproportionately benefiting from these policies, then why is the left so against getting rid of the policy? Like, come on guys, we can all tell you're bluffing. You don't actually believe this.
You know, we always say that we learned so much on TikTok that we were not taught in schools. Well, trending on Twitter is W0men, and it's in response to affirmative action. So let's all learn something. I really hope I'm saying her name right. Olayemi tweets out, I don't know who needs to hear this, but white women have benefited more from affirmative action policies than any other demographic. The problem with always trying to hurt black people is you inevitably end up hurting yourselves. Holy shit, let's go. And for my smoked affirmative action, you know who's going to be really mad when they figure out they were the main beneficiaries of affirmative action? White women. Cue the meme from the guy shooting himself like, why did I do this to me? We have from Ellie. The biggest beneficiaries of affirmative action over the last 60 years have been white women. That remains unchanged. Currently, most elite schools give a bump to white men whose grades and scores are now consistently outpaced by women. They still get affirmative action too. And Olayemi comes back. Considering the fact that RBG refused to retire, white women continue to vote overwhelmingly Republican, and they do. And it's actually white women that benefit most from affirmative action policies. I did not know that until now. Just like it's them who treat abortion as a flagship cause. I did know that. White women need to have a meeting. Okay, white women, let's have this meeting. We need to do it. And from our own here on TikTok, SCOTUS ruling to end affirmative action is driven by anti-black racism, and the bizarre irony is that white women have benefited more from affirmative action than every other racial demographic combined. So this SCOTUS ruling harms white women the most. They never, ever check themselves, do they? And by they, I mean my own white folk. We literally will cut off our nose to spite our face, and that's what the Trump court did today.
Sick and tired of being sick and tired? Because guess what? Here is the next rollout. We benefited from this. Your daughters, your granddaughters, your nephews, your nieces, everybody. And our climate, because it's this colonialist, destructive, hierarchical thinking, and guess who's at the top, and guess who's right under it, who's been upholding it? Us. We are trained and indoctrinated, jacked up with the message that we need to uphold it. So what happens is we experience the shame, and then we dance around it. It's time to stop dancing around it. This is your intervention, okay? Here's your intervention. Please go sit in this. Please. For everybody's sake now. For sustainability on the planet. Anybody who's not doing anything about this, especially us white women, if you're not unpacking your shit and deconstructing this colonialist mindset and our role in it, and our perpetuating, in our complicit silence, dancing around the issues, you white liberal women out there who are not speaking on racism, you're part of the problem now. Affirmative action is coming after white women. No fault divorce after white women. Abortion bans. Go read the research. There's plenty of creators out here that are telling you what that's all about. Connect the dots. Please, sisters, connect the dots now. I'm done. With this. And I know you are. You're empty because we don't have that community. The colonialist mindset, the white supremacist patriarchy tells us to stay complicit. We've been the ones upholding it. But we can also dismantle it now. So it begins inside, and you can direct message me. There's plenty of creators. Find somewhere private where nobody's watching, and you can turn off that on TikTok of what videos you're taking in, if whatever you're worried about. But it's time to listen and learn from Black, Indigenous, and all women of color. Us melanin deficient women, we need to step aside, get out of our comfort zones now. I really pray that you heed this warning. Okay?
So we all remember the overturning of affirmative action because some very misinformed people thought Black students were taking away opportunities from well-deserving students, even though white women benefited most from affirmative action. And everyone was like, but what about legacy admissions? You know, the basically free ride for children of rich white alums. Well, since the ruling on affirmative action, the Education Department has made many recommendations to put an end to legacy admissions. So now we have to call Congress. We have to urge Congress to make sure that this actually does happen. We have a voice. We have to use it. So now go and annoy the hell out of Congress. Call them and email them today.
So this is all I got from the stitches, and sincerely speaking, I don't know why Charlie Kirk is always on Black people's stories and all of that. And some people are still gonna see like he is not rate deceased and the rest of it. What else do you want to talk about? What else do you want? What do you need to convince you that he is such a racist? And not that he is a racist. He's not hiding his own. His own is just very glaring and obvious. Why is it all the time it's always Black people? The other one, it was a pilot. If I see any pilot and he is a Black person, I am going to wonder if the person is qualified to be a pilot. And the next one, if I see a Black woman, like, I'm not just, Not just calling black women, he also belittled them, saying it's moron. Are you being real right now? Because make all this make sense. I know you do not like black people, but I think you should keep black women's name out of your mouth. Because when we look at affirmative action, if we look at affirmative action and we want to talk about the people who has benefited more on affirmative action, you all saw the stitches that rolled. Nobody missed anything about on the people who has benefited from affirmative action. And to think that black women are the most educated all over. I mean, you can check your Google and find out. I am not saying it. Black women are all very educated, and coming out here, it is someone who does not even have a degree. It is amazing how people who do not qualify to speak on a certain things come out to speak or belittle or disrespect black women for no just reason. I really don't understand. Affirmative action says it all, that white women are the most benefited. And now he went on air to say moronic black women. Are you for real? I mean, you can say anything. I really don't care about whatever he says. I really don't care about his podcast or his show or anything that got to do with Charlie Kirk. But coming out to call black women moron and all that is not accepted. It's not acceptable. You can do anything, disregard every other person, but coming out to disregard black women, no, you don't do that. Take your bullshit racist behavior to somewhere else and leave black women alone. You can call your people out because they are the ones benefiting more from affirmative action, not black people. And it is amazing how we talk about this this issue every day. We wake up every day to their BS, because that is what I call it. Every day trying to look for, they are always looking for whom to gaslight. But I think this is bullshit, People that are not even looking out for you. I mean, black people don't even care about him. But every day, it's all about black people. He wakes up to black people. I think he's looking for platform, because I don't see how a human being or a reasonable human being will come out every day to dishing out some lies and all that against a demographic kind of people. I mean, take your bullshit somewhere else and leave black women out of your mouth. See you all in my next video. Bye for now.